we just had our lunch.
Very rough.
For this week, we will have the IHL basics, which I said, the last part or part 3 of our discussion on IHL. Okay. So we will answer the what, the why, the how, the when, and the who, or the 4W and 1H under International Humanitarian Law or IHL. And to begin, let me read to you. Oh wait, I have to play this. Play. War does not determine who is right, only who is left. Anonymous. We do not know who gave this quote. Okay. But this is relevant. This is important. And we can relate this to last week's discussion when I gave you or posed the question, when I posed the question of whether or not you agree with the saying that all is fair in love and war. Because I disagree that all is not fair in love, and most especially not all is fair in war. And here we see that in war, there is no right reason. Okay? Even if you are right, but if you are not powerful, if you are not dominant, if you are not well equipped, then it will be a matter of survival, and it will be a matter of who is left. Okay. So the first question, the first W, what are the causes of war? But before we answer that, let us first define the meaning, or let us first define or give the meaning of war. Okay, so under the Oxford English Dictionary, war is defined as a state of armed conflict between countries or different groups within a country, or a state of competition or hostility between different peoples or groups. So in these definitions given by the Oxford English Dictionary, you will be able to see the connection with last week's discussion or with the last discussion regarding the applicability of IHL with respect to international armed conflict and non-international armed conflict. Okay. To proceed, it also gives us the definition that a war is a sustained campaign against an undesirable situation or activity. Well, this is a broader definition of war, and it can apply to anything or everything. Like our war against terror, our war against COVID-19. Okay, but our topic for public international law is armed conflict, internationally and non-international armed conflict. Okay. So, what are the causes of war? Okay. What I can say and what other authors can say is that there is no single reason or cause of war or armed conflict. Okay. War arises because of many reasons or many causes, including changing relations and changing variables or factors such as factors of technology, psychological reasons, social issues, intellectual factors, or intellectual variables, etc. Okay? And as we know, wars have become part of human history as we have been discussing for the past two lectures. Okay, part of human history for thousands of years way back, and we have become increasingly destructive as technology advances and as industrialization has set in. Okay, and according to one author, he said that there are 8 main reasons for war, or 8 main causes of war, and they include economic gain, territorial gain, religion, nationalism, revenge, civil war, revolutionary war, and defensive war. Okay, so you can look up these reasons and research on your own, have additional readings to really discover the intricacies of each reason why we go to war. Okay. Another related question are Another related question is on the effects of war. What are the effects of war? But in general, what I can say as a very broad answer, and I hope you will agree with me that the effects of war are not pretty. Okay, they do more harm than good. Okay, the effects include long-term physical, emotional, mental, psychological, even spiritual harm. Also, it causes the degradation and the destruction and reduction of human capital and material capital. Injury and death are results of war. And there are many other causes which we may um, list down, and many other causes or reasons or effects which have not been documented. Okay, so you can do some research on that. Okay, so international humanitarian law, IHL, comes into play whenever the subject matter of war or armed conflict crops up. Okay, so briefly, let us recall the role of IHL in war or in armed conflict. Okay, so let us see this slide with a picture of a soldier during the Vietnam War. And we have discussed this. So, international humanitarian law, a set of rules which place restrictions on the use of weapons and methods of warfare. It protects people who are not or no longer participating in hostilities. It aims to protect human dignity and to limit suffering during times of war. It is also known as LOAC, or Law of War, or Law of Armed Conflict, as we learned in the past discussions. Excuse me. Okay. So with this brief definition or with this brief discussion, you can all already derive the four principles that we discussed the last lecture, and the 6 basic rules of IHL. So recall that because I might ask that in the final exams. Okay. Next question, which is the next W. Next W, yes. Why is IHL important? Okay. It is very important. It is very significant because it is one of the most powerful tools the international community has at its disposal. This is to ensure the safety and dignity of people in times of war or armed conflict. Okay? And as you can see here, it seeks to preserve a measure of humanity with a guiding principle that even in war, there are limits. And there should be limits in everything, such as we discussed before in IHR, there are limits even in the exercise of your human rights, except in non-derogable rights. Okay. Next, okay, let me read to you a quote from Nelson Mandela. The Geneva Conventions continue to remind us most forcefully of our common obligation to care for each other. Okay, this is very powerful. Even if the Geneva Convention, even if we're not talking about the Geneva Convention, especially nowadays, we have a common obligation to care for each other. Okay? If we want to win this fight against COVID-19. Okay? And if we want to overcome all the struggles and challenges of this pandemic and what is happening around us, what is happening in the Philippines. But that is not our topic for today. Okay. Next question is the only H in the 4W1H. Okay. So the H is, how does IHL protect? The how. Okay. How does IHL protect? It limits the use of weapons which are particularly cruel or which do not distinguish between combatants and non-combatants or civilians. Okay? And also, it requires the parties to a conflict to distinguish between combatants and civilians or non-combatants, and to refrain from attacking civilians or non-combatants. Okay? It also requires the parties to a conflict to care for the wounded and the sick and protect medical personnel. Excuse me. And it requires the parties to a conflict to ensure the dignity of prisoners of war or POWs and civilian internees is preserved. Okay. Okay. I think this is the last question. The last W, when? When does IHL apply? Okay. So as we have discussed, it applies when there is war or armed conflict, whether international or whether non-international. So again, as we recall, international armed conflicts involve at least two countries, and non-international armed conflicts take place in one country, such as between the government and rebel forces. Like in the Philippines, for example, the Philippine government of Duterte versus NPA, CPP, NPA, or the MILF, or Moro National Liberation Front, or Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Okay. There is another W. Okay. Who does IHL protect? The who question. So as listed down, IHL protects civilians, medical and religious personnel, the wounded, the shipwrecked, the sick combatants, and the prisoners of war, POWs. Okay. In relation to this, I would like you to watch the movie Unbroken. It is a 2014 movie directed and produced by Angelina Jolie. And it is based on a true story of a former Olympic runner who joined the American forces, of course, because the setting was in World War II, and their plane crashed over the Pacific Ocean, and they were captured by the Japanese. So you will see the struggles of the prisoners of war in this movie, and it has a very meaningful and deep message or impact. So you watch this, and you will also appreciate IHL, or International Humanitarian Law, and you will see here the abuses during World War II. Okay. So watch that. Unbroken. The title of the movie is Unbroken. Okay. I might ask you about that. Maybe in our live video reports, online reports, or maybe in the exams. Okay. Healthy discussion about that. Okay. And as a bonus, as you can see on your screens, we have here the emblems. Okay. The Red Cross, the Red Crescent, and the Red Crystal. Okay. These are not religious symbols. Okay. These are emblems or symbols of protection under the international humanitarian law, which are given to the wounded, the sick, those who care for the wounded and the sick, protection accorded to medical services, equipment, and property buildings under the IHL. Okay. The Red Cross. Okay. This was first used in 1863. And as you can see, it is a reverse of the Swiss flag, or the flag of Switzerland. Okay. The flag of the Swiss flag is red background with a white cross. Okay. But here we have the Red Cross on a white background. Okay. And then we have the Red Crescent. And the only difference is that this applies in Islamic countries, but they are still the same to protect the wounded, the sick, the medical services, equipment, etc. Okay. And the Red Crystal, which is used in countries with mixed populations, such as Kazakhstan. Okay. And you can use both the Red Cross and the Red Crescent inside the Red Crystal. Okay. If you want to read more about it, you can do so. You can research on this. Okay. So that ends our discussion on the IHL lecture series. Okay. So with respect to the IHL, I would also like you to read on different cases which are not listed on your syllabus, such as the case of Prosecutor versus Kupareskik et al. Okay, Prosecutor versus Kupareskik et al. US versus Plenty Horses, US versus Plenty Horses. The trial of Lieutenant General Carl Stenger and Major Crucius, Benno Crucius. This was in Leipzig, Germany. Okay. And the case of Prosecutor versus Tadik, Prosecutor versus Tadik, and Military Prosecutor versus Omar Mahmoud Qasem and others. Military Prosecutor versus Omar Mahmoud Qasem and others. These are cases in relation to the International Humanitarian Law, or IHL. Okay, so thank you very much for listening and for watching. And I hope you will stay safe and healthy. So thank you very much. God bless you all. And always remember to glorify God with a grateful heart.
Like, subscribe, share, and follow. Thank you very much. We're on our way to 600. This is Attorney Angel, and I'm your legal angel.